Up next, it's our time to check in with all things weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hutt. Eric, as we look across the state, this past week we saw some snow accumulation in areas of the state. As we turn to the week ahead, how are things shaping up?
Thanks, Bryce. There are a few places in the state that might see just a little bit more snowfall this week, so kind of a similar story we saw this last week across the state. Early in the week, though, we are looking at temperatures being relatively mild across the central portion of North America, including all of Nebraska, so I anticipate highs probably getting into the 50s for western and southern portions of the state on Sunday. Probably just a little bit cooler on Monday and Tuesday, but still relatively mild for this time of year with highs mostly in the 40s, which particularly for portions of northeastern Nebraska probably feel like a heat wave. Later in the week, though, we will see a cold front move through the state. That'll bring cooler temperatures for everybody, and we'll probably see a more prolonged cold snap in the eastern portion of the state, with highs probably holding out in the somewhere between the upper 20s and mid 30s in portions of north central, northeastern Nebraska. Highs probably still getting in the 40s across portions of western Nebraska. I think everybody will see a little bit of cool down on Wednesday into Thursday. Then the western portion of the state should start moderating a little bit again by Friday. Eastern Nebraska likely to remain a little bit cool through the end of this next week, but should start moderating next weekend. Precipitation chances are pretty slim to none across most of this region. I think we will see a chance of some light snowfall midweek with that cold frontal pass across the northern portion of the state, but certainly not looking at any significant precipitation, and snowfall amounts to be an inch and a half at best. In terms of temperatures, like I mentioned earlier, we are likely to see warmer than average temperatures in the western portion of the state later this week. So they're probably going to be a relatively strong temperature gradient from west to east, declining west to east in Nebraska as we head toward the end of this next week, as has often been the case in the last couple of weeks, where we've generally been much warmer in the western portion of the state than we've been in northeastern and east central portions of Nebraska. CPC is favoring warmer than average conditions across the western half of the country, including all of Nebraska for the week before Christmas. So I'd anticipate there being a lot of days with highs in the 40s and probably a couple of days with highs in the 50s as we head into the period just before Christmas. CPC also is expecting to be pretty dry here across this region of the country before Christmas. There are hints that there could be a storm system moving into this region as we head to the period just after Christmas. Still a little ways out. There's not a lot of signal, any consistent signal in the models, that is, just yet. But it's the closest thing I can report to you in terms of actually maybe having some meaningful precipitation for portions of western and central and parts of eastern Nebraska, where we really just haven't seen much of anything here of late. In terms of your chances of white Christmas, as you probably could guess with warm and dry being favored, there is basically very little chance of white Christmas this year, it appears. You'll have to go pretty far north or head to the mountains to get a white Christmas this year, it appears. Recent snowfall, again, we are starting to run some pretty decent deficits of snowfall across the high plains region, including western Nebraska. A lot of the upper Midwest is also seeing some deficits of snowfall this year. This is definitely concerning for portions of the northern Rockies where we have long-term drought conditions. And that also is some important watersheds for the western and central portions of the state. And they definitely are starting off the season low on snowfall. Recent precipitation, very, very little across the state again this week. There are portions of the state, actually most places in the state have not had any meaningful precipitation in almost 4 weeks, and some places have not had measurable precipitation in almost 4 weeks. Best I saw this week was just about a tenth of an inch in portions of northwestern Nebraska. Drought monitor, very little, actually no changes this week. We still have about half the state in severe drought and about 85% of the state in some form of drought. Soil moisture still pretty low across this region. Soil temperatures right now mostly holding right around freezing or slightly above across the state, and our temperature precipitation roundup. Back to you, Bryce.